Where do you go when you die? Not humanity, not consciousness in general. You. Where do you go when this stops? Most people answer too quickly. Heaven, nothingness, another life, energy. But none of those answers come from experience. They come from fear. Because no one actually knows what happens when consciousness ends. We only know one thing. It starts once, and it stops. The question is not what you believe happens next. The question is, why did it ever start at all? If consciousness exists anywhere, science assumes it must be here, inside the brain. 86 billion neurons, electrical signals, chemical exchanges, patterns firing in precise timing. This is where decisions form. This is where memories are stored. This is where perception is processed. So this should be where consciousness lives. And yet, no matter how deeply we look, no matter how advanced our tools become, we never actually find it. We find activity. We find correlation. We find structure. But we never find experience. Neuroscience can tell us when consciousness changes. It can tell us what happens in the brain when pain is felt, when a thought appears, when awareness fades during sleep or anesthesia. But it cannot point to the moment and say, this is where consciousness begins. Because everything we observe in the brain can be described from the outside. Signals, processes, reactions. Consciousness is different. It is not something we see. It is something we are. And this creates a fracture science cannot close. From the outside, a brain is an object. From the inside, it is a world. No scan shows meaning. No measurement captures presence. No equation explains why experience feels like something instead of nothing. So the question shifts. If consciousness is produced by the brain, why can't we locate it? And if it cannot be located, what exactly is the brain doing? Is it generating consciousness? Or is it simply the place where consciousness becomes visible? This is where certainty begins to erode. Because if the brain were truly the source, consciousness should behave like a product. It should be buildable, transferable, replicable, but it isn't. Every attempt to reduce consciousness to neurons and signals explains function, but never presence. And the more precisely we map the brain, the clearer this gap becomes. Not smaller, wider. As if consciousness is not hiding in the brain at all, but appearing through it. Which leads to a disturbing possibility. Maybe the brain is not where consciousness comes from. Maybe it's where consciousness is allowed to happen. And if that's true, then the most important question is no longer what the brain is made of, but what conditions allow experience to appear there and nowhere else. The brain is often described as a machine. Input goes in, processing happens, output comes out. From this perspective, consciousness seems obvious. If the machine is complex enough, experience should emerge. But this assumption carries a quiet bias. It assumes the brain creates consciousness, the way a factory creates a product. Yet there is another possibility, one that feels deeply uncomfortable. What if the brain doesn't generate consciousness at all? What if it limits it? Throughout history, this idea has appeared again and again, only to be dismissed as unscientific, too speculative, too dangerous, and yet the evidence refuses to disappear. When the brain is damaged, consciousness doesn't always vanish. Sometimes it changes. Sometimes it narrows. Sometimes it becomes sharper in unexpected ways. People lose language but gain emotional clarity. Others lose memory but retain a strong sense of self. In rare cases, damage reduces inhibition, and abilities emerge that were never visible before. If the brain were simply a generator, damage should only subtract. But sometimes it rearranges. This forces an unsettling question. If the brain produces consciousness, why does reducing its function sometimes intensify experience instead of destroying it? A generator breaks when damaged. A filter behaves differently. A filter does not create the signal. It shapes it. It constrains it. It determines what passes through and what does not. Seen this way, the brain begins to look less like a source and more like a boundary. Not the origin of awareness, but the structure that defines its limits. This would explain something strange about human experience. Why consciousness feels continuous, yet fragmented. Why attention is narrow, yet reality feels vast. Why the sense of self feels stable, even though the brain is constantly changing. If consciousness were entirely produced by the brain, it should be as unstable as the organ itself. But it isn't. It persists through sleep. It returns after unconsciousness. It survives radical physical change, always altered, but never replaced. This does not prove that consciousness exists outside the brain, but it exposes a flaw in the simplest explanation. Because if the brain were the sole source, we should be able to build consciousness the way we build machines. We cannot. And if the brain were the container, we should be able to transfer consciousness by copying its contents. We cannot. So the question sharpens. If the brain is not producing consciousness in the way a generator produces power, then what exactly happens when awareness appears inside it? Is the brain the cause, or is it the condition? And if consciousness depends on conditions rather than construction, then creating it may not be a matter of engineering at all, but of crossing a threshold we don't yet understand. When the brain no longer feels like the full answer, the mind looks elsewhere, and the most natural place to look is the universe itself. Because if consciousness doesn't clearly belong to the brain, then maybe it belongs everywhere. This idea appears again and again in philosophy, in mysticism, in modern simulations, in pop science. The universe as a mind, reality as awareness observing itself, consciousness not as an exception, but as the foundation. It feels elegant, comforting, almost inevitable. But this attraction says more about us than it does about the universe, because the idea of a conscious universe solves several human problems at once. It removes isolation. If everything is conscious, then we are never alone. It removes death. If consciousness is universal, then individual loss feels less final, and it removes meaninglessness. A conscious universe implies intention, direction, purpose. In other words, it turns existence into a story that makes sense. But here is the problem. An idea can be emotionally satisfying and still be wrong. The universe does not behave like something that is aware. It does not hesitate. It does not reflect. It does not respond to suffering. Stars collapse without concern. Galaxies collide without memory. Extinction happens without regret. Nothing in the large-scale structure of reality suggests preference, care, or perspective. And yet, the desire to place consciousness everywhere keeps returning. Why? Because the alternative is harder to accept. If consciousness is not universal, then it is rare. If it is rare, then it is fragile. And if it is fragile, then it can disappear completely. The idea of a conscious universe protects us from that conclusion. It allows us to believe that awareness cannot truly be lost, only redistributed. But this belief carries a hidden cost. If everything is conscious, then nothing is special. And if nothing is special, then the question remains unanswered. Why does consciousness feel so singular here? Why is your experience sealed inside your perspective? Why can't awareness be shared, merged, or accessed directly? A universal consciousness should be continuous. Human consciousness is not. It is narrow, private, isolated, which suggests something uncomfortable. Maybe consciousness does not fill the universe. Maybe it punctures it, appearing in rare, unstable places, like a brief window opening in an otherwise indifferent reality. And if that's true, then the question is no longer whether the universe is conscious, but why consciousness appears at all in a universe that seems to have no need for it. If consciousness were truly universal, it should not feel sealed. There should be continuity, overlap, some form of shared access. But that's not how experience works. Your thoughts are not accessible to anyone else. Your pain cannot be entered. Your awareness cannot be observed from the inside. No matter how close another person gets to you, their consciousness never crosses into yours. This is not a limitation of technology. It is a structural boundary. Even language fails here. You can describe what you feel, but description is not transfer. You can explain an experience, but explanation is not access. The most intimate reality you have remains completely unreachable to the outside world. If consciousness were a field, like gravity or space-time, this level of isolation would make no sense. Fields overlap, they extend, they interact continuously. Human consciousness does none of these things. It is local, centered, locked behind a single perspective. This is why the idea of a shared or universal consciousness always collapses at the same point. There is no bridge. No matter how deeply two minds resonate, they never merge. No matter how much empathy exists, experience remains singular. This suggests something deeply counterintuitive. Consciousness may not be something that spreads. It may be something that condenses, a narrowing, a focusing, a collapse into a single point of view. And that point of view feels absolute. You don't experience many consciousnesses. You experience exactly one, always, even when memory fades, even when identity changes, even when the brain is altered, the perspective persists. Not because it's stable, but because it is exclusive. Which raises a disturbing possibility. Maybe consciousness is not meant to be shared. Maybe its defining feature is not awareness, but separation. And if that's true, then consciousness is not a window into a larger mind. It is a boundary that cuts reality into inside and outside. A division so complete that no amount of knowledge, connection, or technology has ever been able to cross it. And if consciousness is fundamentally private, then whatever it is, it does not behave like something that belongs to the universe as a whole. It behaves like something that only exists when reality is forced into a single point of view. Every time we try to understand consciousness, we treat it like something that exists, something that can be found, located, explained. But what if that assumption is the mistake? What if consciousness is not an object, not a substance, not even a system, but a process? Or more unsettling than that, what if it is a side effect? Nothing in nature guarantees experience. Rocks exist without awareness. Stars burn without knowing it. Life itself functioned for billions of years without reflection, without meaning, without a self. Consciousness did not arrive with necessity. It arrived with conditions. This changes the question entirely. Instead of asking where is consciousness, we should ask, what has to happen for experience to appear at all? because consciousness does not behave like something stable. It fades, it fractures, it disappears every night. Deep sleep, anesthesia, unconsciousness. In those states, the body remains, the brain remains, but experience does not. And when it returns, it does not feel copied, restored, or resumed. It simply appears again, as if nothing had been waiting. This suggests something unsettling. Consciousness may not persist, it may only occur, like a flame that exists only while conditions allow combustion. Remove the conditions, and there is no flame going somewhere. There is just no flame. Seen this way, consciousness is not something you carry. It is something that happens when reality organizes itself in a very specific way. And when that organization collapses, experience does not travel onward. It stops. This would explain why consciousness cannot be transferred, uploaded, or preserved. You cannot move a process. You cannot store an event. You can only recreate the conditions and see what happens. But even then, what appears is not the same event. It is a new one, which means something deeply uncomfortable follows. If consciousness is not a thing, then the self is not a thing either. It is a momentary pattern, a temporary alignment, a perspective that exists only while the system holds together. And once it doesn't, there is no container left for experience to occupy, no place for it to go. Only the silence that was always there before it appeared. We keep asking where consciousness is as if it must occupy a location, the brain, the body, the universe. But that question may be shaped by a habit we've never questioned. We assume that everything real must exist somewhere. Matter does, energy does, objects do, experience might not. No one has ever observed the location of awareness, not in space, not in time, not in the brain itself. We only infer it because experience is happening. But inference is not placement. When pain is felt, we can point to the nerves involved. When vision occurs, we can map the visual cortex. Yet the feeling of pain is not located in the nerves. The experience of seeing is not sitting inside the neurons. Those structures explain how signals move. They do not explain why anything is felt at all. This suggests something subtle, but radical. Consciousness may not be something that exists in space. It may be something that happens to space, from a perspective that only exists once experience begins. In other words, consciousness does not occupy a location, it creates one. The moment awareness appears, there is a center, a here, a now. A point from which the world is experienced, but that point does not exist before consciousness appears. And it does not remain when consciousness disappears. This is why asking where consciousness goes may be a category error. It doesn't go anywhere because it was never there in the first place. It only felt local because experience requires a reference point. Remove experience, and the reference vanishes. No center, no inside, no outside. Just processes continuing without anyone there to witness them. This would explain why consciousness cannot be placed, stored, or installed. You cannot insert a center into a system from the outside. A center only exists from the inside. Which leads to an unsettling conclusion. Consciousness does not need a place because it is the sense of place. It is the event where reality stops being abstract and starts being lived. And when that event ends, nothing moves, nothing travels. The world simply continues without a point of view. Every night, consciousness leaves, not symbolically, not metaphorically, it simply stops. There is no experience of deep sleep, no sense of time passing, no awareness of absence, and yet, when consciousness returns, it feels continuous, as if nothing was lost. This illusion is powerful, but it hides something crucial, because during those hours there is no you waiting, no observer paused in darkness, no consciousness resting somewhere else. There is only a gap where experience does not occur. Death may not be different in kind, only in duration. When the brain permanently loses the conditions required for experience, consciousness does not move on. It does not transition. It does not observe its own absence. It ends. And this is the part the human mind resists most, because the mind cannot imagine its own non-existence. It always places itself somewhere after the end, watching, waiting, floating. But non-existence has no perspective. There is no darkness to witness, no silence to endure, no void to experience. Those are all still experiences. If consciousness disappears completely, there is no one left to experience anything at all. From the outside, the world continues. Atoms move, stars burn, time flows, but from the inside, there is no inside anymore. This does not mean death is tragic. Tragedy requires awareness. This does not mean death is peaceful. Peace is still a feeling. It means death is nothing. And nothing is not a state. It is the absence of states. This is why the question, where does consciousness go, has no answer. Because the question assumes there is still someone there to go somewhere. There isn't. And yet, this is not the end of the mystery, because consciousness once appeared from that same nothing, without memory, without continuity, without warning. Which leaves one final disturbance. If consciousness can begin without being placed, without being transferred, without being stored, then its disappearance may not be the final word, not because it continues, but because nothing prevents it from happening again, not as you, not with your memories, but as experience itself, emerging once more wherever the conditions allow it. And if that is true, then death is not a journey. It is not a destination. It is the end of this point of view. And whatever happens after will not be experienced as after at all. Consciousness cannot be created on demand. It cannot be transferred. It cannot be stored. And yet, it exists. It appeared at least once. Here. That alone is enough to disturb every simple explanation. If consciousness were impossible, it would never have happened. If it were guaranteed, it would be everywhere. But it is neither. It appears rarely, briefly, under conditions we do not fully understand. This places consciousness in a strange position, not as a law of the universe, not as a miracle outside it, but as a fragile possibility that reality occasionally allows. This is why every attempt to control consciousness fails. You cannot force an event to occur if the event depends on conditions you cannot fully specify. You can build systems. You can increase complexity. You can simulate behavior. But you cannot command the appearance of experience, because experience does not obey instructions. It emerges, or it doesn't. And when it does, it brings something with it that nothing else in the universe seems to carry. A point of view, a center that did not exist before, a now that cannot be shared, a here that collapses the universe into a single perspective. This is the paradox. Consciousness is small, yet it turns everything into something. Without it, the universe is still there. But it is not present. It does not matter. It does not appear. It does not mean anything. Meaning does not exist without a point of view. And point of view does not exist without consciousness. So consciousness may not be the universe becoming aware of itself. It may be something quieter, the universe briefly becoming experienceable. And when that possibility collapses, nothing dramatic happens. No transition, no departure, no observer watching the end. Just the absence of a center that was never guaranteed to exist in the first place. This is why consciousness feels so urgent. Not because it is eternal, but because it is temporary. And this is why the question will never fully go away. Not what is consciousness, but why does reality ever allow it to happen at all? Consciousness may never give us a final answer, not because we lack knowledge, but because knowledge itself only exists inside it. We look for consciousness in the brain and found activity. We look for it in the universe and found silence. We tried to define it as a thing, a place, a force, and each time it slipped away. Maybe that is the point. Consciousness might not be something meant to be explained. It may be something meant to be experienced while it lasts. Because when consciousness ends, nothing is lost to the universe. But everything is lost to the one who was aware, not in pain, not in darkness, not in absence, simply without experience. And yet, the fact that experience happened at all remains unexplained. Reality does not require consciousness to exist, but consciousness changes what existence is. It turns matter into meaning, time into presence, events into a life. Perhaps consciousness is not the universe waking up. Perhaps it is the universe briefly becoming here. If this question stayed with you, you already know why. The next part of this journey does not begin with answers. It begins with those who are still thinking.